Hello and welcome to Broads and Books. I'm Amy.
And I'm Erin, and this is episode number 126, Closing Time.
This is from the 90s band Semisonic.
Semisonic.
This is again part of our One-Hit Wonders themed fall. And this came out in 1998, and nary a song did come out from Semisonic after that that I know of.
No. What happened?
I don't know.
What
I mean,
happened?
they peaked. This was huge.
It was huge.
Yeah, they peaked with this one, and then they were like, well, it's closing time for us because
we have nothing else in the tank.
Nothing else
we got nothing else in the can. Dang it.
So yeah, I chose this because I like the idea of talking about endings.
Yes.
You know, because this is all about the end of the night, end of the party at the bar, and now it's closing time, and now you got to find your person and get the hell out.
Get going.
Yeah. Do you remember when you first heard the song, and what'd you think?
I do, because this was picked as our high school graduation song.
Oh.
Like every class, I was trying to remember the details around this, because as soon as you suggested it, it brought it right back. Wow. And there was like the song that they played at graduation, and the class got to pick it. And I don't remember how it came up or if there was a vote. None of that is clear to me. But I remember hearing it the first time and thinking, really? That's what we're going to do? We're talking about. But then now looking back, I graduated in a class of 53 people.
Oh, okay.
So a seedy, I'm leaving a bar at 2 a.m. I'm done with you. I've spent too much time with you. I want this to be over type song was actually perfect.
It makes
for our
a lot of sense.
Yeah. It tracked, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
That's a great juxtaposition. You're right.
Yeah.
And it would only work for a small class like that where you are sick to death of one another.
Yeah.
Cannot lay eyes on them one more time.
Not one more time.
Have you ever laid eyes on anyone since high school?
Yeah, I mean, a few people. I mean, of course, you got the weird Facebook thing where you're friends with a bunch of people.
I mean,
like,
eyes
I barely
on
talk
eyes
to
in person. Yeah,
a few that I would care to. You know, like there's a few that you're like, yeah, I have fond memories, but for the most part, I'm good.
Wow. What a nice and sort of, sanitized version of Closing Time. Because I remember when it came out, I was in college and it was always played at closing time at the bars in Iowa City. And so you would stumble out into the Ped Mall, drunk off your behind, go find a Euro or go find a dude to make out with, and boom. Closing time.
See, for me, because it has that memory, then when I went to college and they played it at bars,
that's got to be different.
Like, it was jarring.
That's very jarring.
Like, what? I'm in high school? What? No? Like, it was it's something else. But now every time I hear it, I always think of high school graduation, walking out of the gym to closing time.
It is also interesting to think about, because you said like thinking about it now and thinking about like closing time at like a seedy bar compared to high school. And I think it's over time the image has changed for me, because it was like, college time, peak, yay. Yeah. Then you move to Chicago, you're getting a little older and it's getting seedier. It's getting dirtier. Yeah. It's getting like a little more desperate closing time. Yeah. And then, after a while, you're like, good Lord, I'm in bed before closing time.
That's a problem.
I
have a serious problem. Now that the age I'm at, if I'm at a bar and it's closing time, something either went terribly wrong that day. Yeah. Or I have a problem that I need help with.
Can I also tell you, when I moved to Chicago, I found out most of the bars closed at 4 or 5.
Whoa!
And I was ecstatic.
That was horrifying to me. My immediate response was horrified.
Well, again, this was when I was 23, 24. Yeah. Now at 45, good God.
What would be the reason?
I'm almost waking up at that time.
Yes!
That is ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm thinking about some toast. What are you talking about? Pouring some more down this gullet.
But hey, I took advantage.
Good
in
for
my
you.
youth.
Good for
and
you.
And it was delightful.
Yeah.
It probably did some damage on my internal organs. But,
Hey, they say it can repair itself. So, I mean, I choose science. I choose to believe science.
I like that. I'm like a self-repairing robot inside. Yeah.
I choose to believe scientists.
Great. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Isn't it great that we have to say that out loud?
I have sort of adopted it as a thing that I use in all situations.
I believe in science.
Yeah, but I kind of use it as like a Band-Aid for everything.
Oh, yeah.
Like uncomfortable conversations. Yeah. And someone asks for your opinion. I believe in science. You've really said nothing. You have said nothing.
At the same time, you've said everything.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to argue with. What do you mean you believe in science?
Yeah.
I believe in cells. I believe in organisms. I believe in, anatomy,
gravity,
the way the body works. Like
planets.
Simple things like that.
It's interesting you went body and I went space for some reason. But there we go.
It includes everything.
There we go.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
It's the perfect thing.
It's the perfect thing. That's a great conversation stopper. Yeah.
So talking about stopping conversations
Yeah.
and or endings.
Yeah.
Do you remember an ending that brought you relief instead of sadness?
Every single breakup. Because for some reason, I'm always the one breaking up. And I'm always the one that's leaving. And I'm always beyond ready to do so. But for some reason, I have stayed. And that could be inertia.
Okay.
That could be because I'm being, could be, for more nefarious things like manipulation. It could also be just I've been talking myself into this relationship and I didn't need to be for a long time. And so, my goodness, when I decide, oh, it's done, it's time. And once I do that, it is like I weigh 5 pounds and I'm floating up into the heavens.
Yeah.
And I can fly. I can fly, damn it.
I'm going to reveal something to you now that I don't know if I've told you before.
Ooh, let's hear it.
But I've often frequently thought that you would be an amazing Supreme Court judge.
Oh.
And not because you're a lawyer or have any legal experience.
No legal background.
But I don't think you need it. Here's why.
Okay.
I think that what I know about you to be facts are that before you make a decision, it is going to be thoroughly researched and thought out in a way that most people don't do even for the biggest decisions in their lives. To the point where I know that once you get there, your mind's made up. It's good. You got it. You feel confident about it and you move forward. And I feel like that's more of what we need is like factual based. I'm moving forward. I promise you, I've done the research and thought it through.
And it's been months of painful research and soul searching. And suddenly that switch goes on and, I got it. Boom. I'm out.
Which is also why our other business of being a breakup would be amazing. Because I think that you're probably really good at it. Because I think once you get there, you're like, no, this is it.
And if it's someone else, I don't have to go through those 4 months of painful, like soul searching and figuring out and trying to guilt myself into staying into a relationship.
Right.
With someone else, I'll be like, oh, honey, it's time.
It's time.
And I will do it for you. It'll be my pleasure.
It'll be my pleasure.
Let me do this for you.
My pleasure.
Let me give you this closing time.
And I know I'm ride or die, and this might be a controversial statement for some people, but I feel confident in knowing and saying to Amy's past relationships that it was definitely you. Because if she got to the point that she broke up with you, it was you. Because if she thought for 1 second it was her, she would still be working on herself to make sure that she was giving it the best effort.
Yeah.
So if you are no longer in contact with Amy, it is you. It is 100% you. Just sit with that. This time of year can be good for reflection. You might want to do some of that.
It feels very directed, and
but
I like it.
Just saying.
Yeah.
It was you.
It's a very good point because I will blame myself for a long time and then suddenly something will shift. The clouds will part and I'll realize, oh, no. It's them.
Yeah. Oh, no.
It's him or her.
No.
It's that person.
This is what it is. Yeah.
I'm glad you can see that.
Yeah. I'm just saying.
That was very self-affirming. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. I'm glad. It should be. Yeah.
So, thinking about endings. We have talked multiple times on the podcast.
Yes.
In our daily text exchanges. About what happens when you finish a book that you've really enjoyed. We have termed it a book hole.
Yes.
It can also be applied to shows.
Yes.
When you have finished something that was so effing great, and now you don't know how to transition away from that ending. You don't know how to start something new. What's the process like for you?
Well, you know what? This might be too drastic, but I liken it to a death. Because there's like a grieving process. Like that was so great. And it's not every book, to be clear. Like it is certain books that you just feel a real connection with and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to find anything again to read ever. Because nothing can compare, right? Because that's our like natural inclination is to compare it. Same thing with a show. You get done and you're like, you almost have to do something totally different. Like a palate cleanser. Like because otherwise it's too much. But what I find for me in the book world that helps that I've started to try and do when I feel a book hole. Because my initial reaction for a lot of years was just like, I don't read for like 2 weeks because I just need time.
Just quit.
I just
quit
need
it
time.
all.
And I daydream about the characters and I research the author and see if they're writing another book and when it's coming out or if there's a backlist or whatever. There's all
so
these
you
processes.
Go obsession and quitting.
I go obsession. That's what my go-to
I'm
used
never
to
going to
be.
read again.
Never going to read again. It's over for me. I peaked. I'm done. I am the high school jock. I'm never coming back. It's bad. Okay?
I've lived my life.
It's
done.
It's over. Nothing's ever going to compare. That used to be my thought.
Sure.
Now what I do is I do other book related things. Like I cull my TBR pile. Like I go through it again and say, okay, am I going to read this? Am I not? I organize my books. For some reason, reorganizing them or like putting them in different categories, or even just the ones like by my bed, or like I have a favorite shelf, I'll move them around, or I'll, whatever, something like that. I always have books that are out of place, so then I take the time to put them back. Something about just being around it like makes it okay. It's like immersion therapy. Ooh. Like, okay, I forgot I had that book, or like, I forgot I wanted to read that book, and something will spark and say, this is what it's time to read now. Yeah.
That's so cool. And just sort of surrounding yourself with books to remind you that there are other good ones.
Yeah.
That there have been so many.
I do another, like when I'm reading articles, like I'll come across lists, like top crime novels of 2022 or something. You see lists all the time, right? Yeah. I screenshot a lot of the books, and I don't often take the time to go back and put those on my TBR. But those are times that I do, because I'm like, then it makes you read the description. Do I really want to put this on there? And so you kind of go through that process again. It gets you excited, and you're like, oh wait, I ordered that book. I have it. Like I should start that one.
This is brilliant.
It's tricking myself is really what it is.
And it seems like it works.
It does.
And it's better than quitting and just saying, I'm never reading again.
Right. It's better than my first instinct, which is to throw everything and run away. Yeah. What about you?
My instinct is anger. Okay. Because that just sort of angry that this new book that I've picked is not that other book.
Yeah.
That how dare you not be that book that I just loved? Yeah. How dare you?
How dare you come in here with your different cover and other words?
Same thing with like another show or a movie or something. It's like, it's not going to be what I just finished. Yeah. It's not going to be what I love. So I just irrationally angry. But maybe that's part of the grief too. It's one of the stages of grief.
It is.
But I think one thing that I do try to do more practically is if I've just finished a novel I really love, the next thing I'm going to read is going to be another genre pick.
Right.
It's going to be nonfiction. It's going to be a graphic novel. It's going to be something different enough in form to sort of jog my brain to get into a different... Because if I start another novel right away, and
you're going to compare.
I still do this mistake all the time. I finished a book on Monday that I really loved, and then started another novel right away, and was just furious.
Yeah,
just furious. And then I started like four more.
That book exactly. In a different time.
Exactly.
But,
yeah.
And you started four more.
I started like four more in quick succession, and each one, it's not the one. It's not that
You're
book.
Not it.
You're not it. Oh. So yeah. So I didn't follow my own advice. But now I've started, by the way, a memoir that compares or that sort of tracks her personal life with Dolly Parton songs.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So I was like, it's Dolly Parton. It's going to get me out of my book hole.
It's going to get
me out of my book hole.
It's going to get you out of your book hole.
And spoiler alert, it's probably going to appear in a future Brides and Books episode because I'm liking it.
That brings me to a side note.
Oh.
Unrelated to the podcast.
All right.
Jeff Bezos, I see you.
Oh.
Okay, I see you.
Ooh.
You gave Dolly Parton money because you know that she's a likable figure who's going to do really good things with that award.
So it'll clean up your money.
That's what I don't like about it. You're using Dolly Parton. You're trying to ride her beautiful sequin coattails.
Yeah.
And I'm pissed about it, Jeff Bezos. Because your angry face and your dick rocket do not belong anywhere near that
How
American
dare you
treasure.
Try to besmirch our national icon, Dolly Parton.
And you know what? Fine. Yes, she's going to do good things with the money, but I don't like... you're nefarious.
It does feel a little like money laundering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like you're trying to get some goodwill off her.
Yeah. Which you're absolutely right. It is gross.
Yeah.
You're being gross.
You're being gross.
Stop it.
Stop doing that.
He's not going to stop being gross.
Stop doing it.
You know who else is not going to stop being gross? Elon Musk.
Yeah. Oh.
I got to say, I have had, in my book hole this month or this week, I've taken such an extreme joy in just his complete and utter failures as a leader at Twitter. It's been wonderful. And part of it is we've said goodbye to Twitter. I am out.
Yes.
I don't care anymore.
No.
So stake in the game anymore.
Sorry, listeners, if you're looking for us on Twitter, as soon as Elon Musk bought it, we said,
out.
Peace. I don't want any part of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So now it's just like sitting back and watching like, this is
the worst kind of
This is terrible. You are a terrible leader.
You're awful at your job.
And this is going to just collapse on you. And I love that it's going to make you look like an asshole.
What I love about it is it's such a great, shining, beautiful example of hubris.
It really is.
It's just such a cautionary tale that we're watching pay off. Like, you're really good at this one thing, and you thought that somehow your power and money was all consuming. And I'll tell you what, it started when you thought you could do SNL. You should have known when the best they had for you was Mario that it wasn't great. And you probably should have taken stock. But instead what you did was double down and say, I'm going to spend all my money. I'm going to buy Twitter. Everyone's going to be pumped. You just didn't anticipate that no one was going to be excited.
No one's going to be pumped.
No one's excited. No one.
Yeah, and you also cannot laugh at yourself at all.
No.
When you opened it up and said, yay, comedy again, and then everyone took you on your word and started making fun of you and, you know, parroting and everything, he could not handle it.
No.
He's that guy that cannot handle being the butt of a joke.
But loves to make them. You know he makes them at people's expense all the time. I also love that it's like watching like a bad, like, everybody went to school with one of these people. Oh. It's like watching someone melt down on a playground. Like, you will sign a sheet that you will work for 200 years with no pay or you're fired. You're like, what? What are you talking about? You can't just publicize that.
Weren't you just playing Foursquare? What are you doing?
What are you doing? Like, you can't say that publicly. But no, he's like doing it.
Yeah, he's doing it.
And he's like, anybody that has any engineering ability, everybody quit. I need someone. You don't put that out there.
No.
You don't put that out there. But
and I feel very bad for all the Twitter employees. But at the same time, it feels like they're like, oh, I am dodging a bullet getting out of here. And maybe some severance. Awesome.
Yeah, I think that's all kind of where they're at. Is just like, see ya.
Yeah.
Like, sorry about this.
We'll go develop something else.
Yeah. They're not dumb.
No.
So.
Oh, just love to see a billionaire brought low a little bit.
It is fun.
It might be,
Elon Musk. I hate to bring up another person who was a billionaire and then real quick wasn't, but it sort of feels like is 2020, the end of 2022, going to be the end of billionaires? Like, you're all just doing stupid things. Jeff Bezos, you put too much money into rockets, and now you're saying that your company is not doing well.
Yeah.
You know, you got Kanye West, who literally was a billionaire, and the next day he wasn't.
Oh boy, yeah.
We got Elon Musk, same deal. Same deal. You
we
spent
got that
$44 billion
that just collapsed.
Cryptocurrency guy just collapsed. Like, billionaires just losing it left and right.
That's pretty fun to watch.
Yeah. I mean,
is that mean to say?
No, I think it's exactly what we needed at the end of 2022.
Yeah, we've had a hard couple years. We need some billionaires to flame out.
I need to watch you fall from your golden perch and hit every stair on the way down.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Jeff Bezos' ex still has a lot of money and is using it right.
He is doing well. Yes. And also, Jeff Bezos put out this like warning about the economy and how bad it's going to be, and if you shouldn't be buying things right now, like refrigerators and car. He listed everything that Amazon doesn't sell. He never once said something that was like you could buy on Amazon. He said things like refrigerators and cars and whatever. No, you should. What?
You are gross and your intentions are showing, sir.
You're bad at this. You're bad.
So bad.
You're bad.
Oh, that was cathartic.
It was cathartic.
To talk about that a little bit.
I know that took us down a rabbit hole of Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, but it's always fun to glory in when hubris is brought low.
Yes. It's everything that I wanted it to be, because also I feel like Elon Musk thinks that he's attractive.
Yes.
He does, right?
Yeah, he thinks he's like Tom Cruise.
Yeah, he thinks that.
Yeah, and like Tom Cruise circa 1986.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not true.
It feels more
we
like
believe
a
in science.
stand-in in the Goonies. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair.
That's fair to say.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. I will give him one thing. I think he's more Mario than Chris Pratt.
Okay. Yeah.
But Mario,
well, those standards aren't very high.
No.
Yeah.
No. Mm-hmm. And as a parent who's going to have to see that movie, I'm angry at you, Nintendo.
No.
I'm angry at you, but it's fine.
I forget that you have to be subjected to these. And you're going to have some... Well, you'll have to report back on how it went.
Sure will.
And, if you still feel like loving anyone in the world after that.
Not sure. Sure.
Probably not going to.
Yeah. That's fine, though. Yeah. Mason will get great joy out of it.
Oh,
I mean, they announced a Garfield movie. It's not till 2024, and I don't know if a week goes by he doesn't ask how much closer we are to it. So, also with Chris Pratt.
I love that no matter how many billionaires flame out, we still have Mason and his enduring love of cats.
So much cats.
It's several years now.
Yeah,
that he's been talking and loving and wanting cat paraphernalia for everything. Everything. It's wonderful. At least we have that.
Yeah. At least we still have Mason's cat love.
Yeah. You know what we also have? Books!
That will get you out of a book hole.
Yeah, actually they will, because like my fiction pick it's going to get you out of a book hole.
Okay.
It's called Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn, and it came out this year. And
you have said this was amazing.
3 words for you. Old women assassins.
I'm in.
It's going to cure your book hole. That sounded really weird.
It made it sound like a STD. It's gonna cure your book hole. We know we're getting rid of Planned Parenthood, and you can't do that anymore. But we'll do it for you.
Cure it.
It'll cure it right up.
Cure that infection right up. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we got 4 women: Billy, Mary Alice, Helen, and Natalie. And they were recruited in the late 1970s into a clandestine organization called the Museum. And the organization was originally formed to hunt and kill Nazis who had escaped after World War II.
Okay.
And then over time, the Nazis died out or they killed them. So it sort of morphed to other bad dudes. So these women, they've spent their lives as the best of the best. And now they're in their 60s. And they're still taking jobs, but less and less, because more and more the younger assassins are all about tech and data, whereas they really got into people skills, you know, and trying to do sort of the groundwork to be able to do their job. So it's a natural time for retirement. And the organization, the museum, gives them an all expenses paid, super luxurious cruise to mark their retirement.
Okay.
Which also sounds gross, by the way, but still.
Yeah, not what I want, but all right.
Except on the cruise, someone from the museum tries to kill them.
Oh, no. It was a setup?
It was a setup.
Yeah.
And so these women, they escape because they're badasses.
Of course.
And then they're on the run. And they have to figure out who's trying to kill them, who they can trust, and who they may have to kill to get out of this situation.
Oh.
And thankfully, they were trained very well, so they are ready for this.
I love it.
And they work together like experts, because they are. So now it's time for old women who are continually ignored and seen as harmless to protect themselves and to take down this organization.
I love it.
So I chose it for this theme because there's the end of their career, their retirement, right? Which turns out to be not the end.
Right.
But there's also this idea of endings, like past a certain age, women are considered useless, right? Like they might as well just die because they're at the end of any sort of use that society has for them. They're over. And this is one of those wonderful books that shows that they're not.
Right.
And so it's fun. It's gratifying. I think it's perfect for a movie, and I've already cast the movie.
Ooh, who's
Here's
in it?
my
Who's
cast.
in it? Oh, my God. You're going to be great at this. I love it so much.
It's going to be Meryl Streep.
Okay.
It's going to be Michelle Pfeiffer.
Okay.
It's going to be Angela Bassett. And Michelle Yeoh. These are
What
all
a
women
cast.
in their 60s or over.
That's perfect.
And also, I would love to see Meryl Streep as an assassin.
That would be amazing.
Wouldn't it be awesome?
This would be a great movie.
This is great. So listen, I trademarked it. Trademark.
Trademark.
So if you cast
how it
any of
works.
those women, I get a cut.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
In fact, you should be getting in touch with our agents right now.
How does one get in touch with Michelle Pfeiffer's agent? Because
I think it's worth a Google.
okay, all right, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Angela Bassett too.
Yeah.
Any of them.
Yeah.
I am ready. This is going to be great.
That is great. Yeah, you were, when reading it, told me that it was amazing.
Yes.
So.
And again, it's one of those that it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. There's mystery to it.
You need that.
And I think I read it after I was in sort of a book hole too, and it helped me get out.
I like that.
So there you go.
Wonderful. Well, my pick this week for fiction pick is called All That's Left Unsaid by Tracy Leanne. And this was released in August 2022. It's a debut novel by this writer. It starts out, Key is out on her own, starting out her life as a reporter. And we quickly learn she's the daughter of Vietnamese refugees who moved to Sydney, Australia during at the end to escape from the Vietnam War. And she has one brother, Denny, who is still in high school. But she kind of branched out. She wanted to be a reporter. She left home. She kind of just felt stifled by everything there, right? Like, I just can't live in this same pattern. I have to do something different. But in that process, because of some of her upbringing, she kind of has this desperate need to prove her worth all the time, to kind of reinvent herself as an adult. She's in that weird struggle period where, you are an adult, but you also still feel very tied to family responsibility and those old patterns. So... And that's also partially because she grew up in this very sheltered world in Sydney, Australia, in
You all right there? Oh, I see you spelled out a pronunciation, and you're tripping up on it, aren't you? Still can't do it. The look on your face of, oh shit, it didn't work. The pronunciation is in all caps. And you still couldn't do it.
I still couldn't do it. Mike and I just had this conversation this week. There's a short circuit in my brain when it comes to pronunciations. Like, I have to spell it out phonetically.
But you did it already once.
I know.
And it worked. But now this second one, it's not working.
And that was the easier one for me.
Do you want to try it again?
Cabramatta.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Cabramatta.
And this is a town in Australia.
It is a suburb in Australia.
Okay.
That was a refugee enclave. Like, that's where they all went from. So they had a lot of familiar things in that area. Okay. So, but that was also very stifling because even though you are in this other place, they weren't really accepted by the rest of Australia. And there was a lot of problems in this area. It ended up being like the epicenter of the heroin epidemic.
Oh, boy.
Add to that a lot of disinterested cops who never took the time to learn the culture, and you have just this kind of violent enclave. So there was this desperation for these parents who wanted their kids to succeed, but also felt very protective and scared. So her parents call and say, should we let your brother Denny go out after this big high school gathering? He's getting ready to graduate. Like, should we let him go to this? It doesn't feel... they're scared. And she's like, oh my gosh, he's a senior. Like, he's going to go to college. It's fine. Like, Denny's so good. He never gets in trouble. She's a little bit frustrated. And she's like, absolutely, let him go. So even though there's like there's these reasons not to, she feels like they're being overprotective. So what happens after that, and this ends up, you find this out right away, is that these are words that she's going to forever regret because Denny ends up brutally murdered in a community restaurant that night. And there are no answers. She goes home for the funeral and she realizes that maybe her parents weren't told everything because either they're refugees or they didn't understand it or whatever, but it doesn't seem like anybody's working on it. She realizes really quickly that unless she gets involved, there's going to be no answers.
Oh my gosh.
And so she decides that that's absolutely what she's going to do. She's going to try and put these reporter skills to use. She's going to dig in. So she's going to the police station, and because they're somewhat indifferent and they're overwhelmed, the police officer kind of feels bad and gives her information that he maybe wouldn't normally give out. Uh-oh. So she kind of has a start, and she starts kind of going down her leads list. Now, this is not a typical like quote unquote crime novel in the sense like she's terrible at it. Like, she's too close to it, right? It's her brother.
Yeah.
And she's interviewing people. She ends up having to go back to like people that she went to high school with, old teachers. No. She has this best friend that she hasn't seen for years because they had a falling out, and she might be involved and she doesn't know how or why. And in the middle of all this, she's dealing with her parents' grief and how to help them through it, and trying to have language for when everything's changed, but everybody's treating each other the same. So to me, there is a mystery kind of murder component, but it's really very much less about that and more about like learning how to grow in your old relationships and learning how to be new when you have all these old patterns with people, and how do you change? How do you be different? So I really thought that it was a beautifully written debut novel. I mean, to be this complex and nuanced and have this whole other story, I thought was really well done. But I really picked it this week because it deals with so many endings. We're talking about high school ending. We're talking about the end of kind of your innocent part of your childhood, of being an adult, of relationship ending, maybe not even because someone's gone, but because you're a different person. Something's changed you. And how do you reform relationships? And to me, that's a lot of what's scary about endings, is like, how do you all fit together again afterwards? I mean, even as simple as the book thing, like, that's part of it, right? You've had this like crazy awesome experience with a book. Like, how do I move on? Mm-hmm. How do I honor that but still move on? And I feel like what I like about the book is there's not any definite answers, but there are answers too, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I really, really, really liked it. I thought it was beautifully written. It's touching. It's sad. But it's propulsive because you want to find out what's going on. There's a lot of heartbreak in it, but there's also a lot of hope. And it'll be interesting to see what she does next, because I really enjoyed it. So,
do you know if she herself grew up in Sydney?
I think, gosh, I read an article about her too. Yes, I believe that she did, but she lives in the United States now. I want to say, I was trying to think what publication she normally writes for.
I just ask because it sounds like a very interesting sort of look at a community that you may not get a look at otherwise. We don't see it in media. We don't.
Intimate, like the details, and it was very interesting. And she has some really interesting characters. Like, I'm always fascinated by authors being able to write in like side characters that aren't necessarily like central to the plot. Like we might only see them for a chapter, but they tell you so much about kind of the culture and what's going on. And she does that really well because she's interviewing these other people. So you might see them for a snippet and then you kind of move on. Yeah. It's interesting.
It's actually very interesting too, because my next pick has a lot in common with what you were talking about in terms of like refugee community.
Yeah.
So my other genre pick is called What is Home, Mum? And it's by Saba Khan. It's a graphic memoir, and it came out this year. And this is such a personal story, but it's one that fills this like massive, huge story of immigration, refugeedom, diaspora. So Saba grows up in East London, in an area that's filled with British Pakistanis like her and her family. And many of them in that area, that community, and throughout the UK have come there from a rural area in Kashmir. And after partition in 1947 between India and Pakistan, there was a dam that was built in this rural community. And that whole area became completely transformed, untenable. Like they couldn't farm anymore. They couldn't do anything that they had been used to. Wow. So entire communities were displaced and had to migrate. So that's the story of her family. And that's what happens there. That is what has happened to her parents and to all these other people in this community. So she's growing up in the aftermath of that and trying to figure out like, where is home? Is it East London? Is it Kashmir? Is it Pakistan? Like, what do we call as home? And as a byproduct, like, who is she herself? Right. And it's interesting because she grows up and she calls herself sort of the good girl of this large family because she's the one who comforts her mother. She doesn't cause problems, while her older siblings are sort of chafing at the rules and chafing at this, clash of traditions and London versus Pakistan. And so she takes on this massive burden of being that good girl, of being the girl that her parents want, but also she's never going to live up to that. Like, you're never going to live up to, especially if you deny your needs, deny like who you are, just to try and, sort of fill the place of your siblings, especially. It's never going to be enough. And it's not enough. Especially because they're not in Pakistan. They're in London. This is not the life her parents wanted at all. So over time, she's, like I said, she's a good girl, but she starts asking more questions, partly as she gets to know more people outside the community, like other religions, other races. So she starts wondering, like, why does her mother depend on her so much? Right. And why do they practice some of the traditions they do? Why does she wear a hijab? So over the book, she's telling stories of her family, both back in Kashmir and here in the UK, of her upbringing, of her questioning of elements of her faith and tradition, of sort of reckoning with race and gender, and so much more. And there's this fascinating level of India and Pakistan history that I didn't know a lot about. It's interesting because right now there's a major anniversary marking that partition that I didn't know about either. So there's that level, but there's also this very rich personal story of a young woman trying to find herself in this weird and impossible world. And I chose it for this theme because I think her family is haunted by the end of their life in Pakistan. They can't get past that ending because it's not an ending that they chose. They were forced to migrate and find a decent life in London, but it's never going to be home, so they can't get past that. And that ripples so much throughout their family, throughout the present, throughout the future. And it's such a fascinating look at, I think, what we're calling more and more like intergenerational trauma, passing down the hurts and the pain that you yourself have received, and the impact of like major world events on individuals and so much more. So it's huge stuff, but it's also so personal and unique and really beautiful story.
Oh, wow. That has to be very powerful in a graphic novel form.
Absolutely.
And the way,
and the way that she draws it, There's a simplicity to it, but there's also like a kind of ornateness, and I don't quite know how to say that, but and especially when she's getting into some of the history, it's a really cool method that she's chosen. Yeah,
that sounds amazing. Well, my other genre pick this week is I'm gonna throw you a curveball.
Oh,
it's a collection of poetry.
What?
I know.
How many times have we talked about poetry on this podcast?
Not very much.
Have we ever chosen is this a first?
No, I think you have before.
Have I?
Yeah. I'm almost positive.
Sure. I did.
Yeah, like oh gosh, I can see his face, but I can't think of his name. Anyway.
It was great, helpful. Whatever it was.
Yeah, it was.
It was wonderful. So memorable and so good.
Well, and it's just weird for me because I'll be honest, when we're talking about book holes, I have started throwing in some collections of poetry, and I'm starting to be a little bit more like I'm starting to understand what I like about certain poetry and what I don't like about other stuff. And I'm just starting out, and I'll be perfectly honest. It's kind of like, a reader starting out. You want things that are more accessible.
Yeah.
But I'm finding like, ooh, I liked this author, and then I kind of move on into other ones. But this book that I'm going to recommend, this collection, it came out in November 2020. It's called Homebody by Rupi Kaur. And you might know her from Milk and Honey. And then she did like a graphic follow-up to Milk and Honey that like pictures. And she's got another new book out now that's like a kind of a self-help journal type exercise. But this is a collection of poetry. I just kind of ventured into it. I actually read the other ones as well. This one just spoke to me. I found it to be my favorite. I think it's beautifully written with some very tough themes, which is something that I think poetry often does, right? Is like there's so much more to be said, but saying it succinctly is an interesting exercise. And I think maybe that's at first what bothered me about poetry was like I've always felt like there was more to say. But then the more that I get into it, sometimes you're like, actually, that's the perfect amount to say about that. So this whole book is kind of a journey through her past and into the present. It kind of tells you kind of some things she went through, but it really focuses on like growth and change. But kind of with this idea of endings, like when something ends and we change, how do we refit into our life? Or how do we be okay with a life that looks different, that maybe has a piece missing now or something? And she illustrates some of her own poetry as well, which I always find fascinating. Them together is always something. So there's a couple lines, a couple little poems that I put in here that I thought that I just loved. Like one of them is, depression is silent. You never hear it coming, and suddenly it's the loudest voice in your head.
Yikes.
Right?
You're right. This is one of those situations where that's the perfect amount to say.
Yeah.
And that's it.
This one. I have never known anything more quietly loud than anxiety.
Ugh.
Right? Just like gut punch.
Just the use of quietly loud. That's really cool.
Yeah. And then this one, if you tried and didn't end up where you wanted to go, that's still progress. Okay. It is. Shit. Like, and so much of her, that's what I think gripped me in right away is they were accessible, but there's so much in there.
Yeah.
And that she's talking about specific things, but you can feel it differently because it hits something specific to you. And it's just a very shared experience. So I have been using poetry collections. It takes me longer to read because it's not a form I read a lot.
Yeah.
And I've been reading them in between or just a few here and there of ones that I like. And I am starting to really appreciate it for the ability to put words together in a way that is so succinct and simple sometimes, but says so much. Mm-hmm. We have whole novels that are dedicated to, the feelings of anxiety.
Yeah.
But to explain it that simply is, something else. So I'm telling you, if you are not a confident poetry reader, I think she's a wonderful place to start. This is a wonderful place to start. I'm not saying that because it's all feel good. It's not really. There's a lot about deep, dark feelings, how you deal with those, but it's so relatable and moving that I feel like even if you haven't previously loved poetry, it could be a place that would make you feel like, okay, I can get into this. Which I think is sometimes the mistake, right, with reading is that we don't start at an accessible point.
Yeah, absolutely.
We start at whatever point's presented, and that's not always the right fit.
That's such a good point because we've talked previously about how people can be put off of reading by being given the canon in high school, like all these really like inaccessible books that are hard for anyone to get into, let alone teenagers. And I feel like we've been able to transcend that with fiction and nonfiction and other things. But poetry, I think some of that's is still where I am in my mind.
100%.
Right? Because the poetry that I read in high school and college was first very old, so it was talking to different times and different ways of expression, so I never quite found a way into it.
Yeah. I had a couple really tough poetry classes in college. I think that just turned me off. Like, I mean, 1700s, like colonialism poetry.
Right. Ugh. And part of it is we didn't have the cultural references to understand a lot of it too, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But like anything else, if you don't get something that you can understand the entry point, it's just sort of shut off totally.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's also kind of why I picked it, because it is about endings, but it's also kind of about, like, to me, it's kind of an ending is a great way to grow and change. Like, this is kind of a new, like, here's another new form to try. That I don't want it to be inaccessible to me, but I also am not going to enjoy it if I don't feel something. I feel like I can enjoy it. And so I've been trying. It's been something I've been wanting to do, like, in my reading life. But I think that you exactly hit it on the head. It's got to be something that you understand or can understand, because otherwise, what's the point?
What's the point? It's not going to speak to you in the way that it might be able to speak to you.
And that's where that highbrow literature.
I was just thinking about that. Yes,
goes,
the sort of elitist, like, canon stuff. Like, if you don't get, William Blake, well, then you don't read poetry. Blah, 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 right?
Yeah. Okay.
Which is another thing. Like, it felt like most of the poetry we read were from white dudes. Yeah. So that was a whole other thing that we didn't get.
And also, I don't feel like they have the best command of poetry.
No. Because then I do remember taking a class in college on the Harlem Renaissance and reading some poetry, I think from Gwendolyn Brooks. Yeah. And that, like, felt visceral and real. And I was like, ooh, it's this poetry? Like, this I could get into, you know? Whereas, just odes to an urn or whatever. Yeah, I'm out. No.
I know.
No.
I have such a distinct memory of this poetry class, and it was awful. It was all white dudes.
Yeah.
It was terrible. It was like stanzas and lines and lines to say one thing, and I was like, this is not. Oh. And I remember one of the exercises was we had to, like, write a poem, and I remember, I can even picture how she appeared, but this woman wrote a poem and volunteered to read it, and I can still remember the poem because I remember thinking, that was better than anything we read all. And
Whoa.
it was I don't even know what they call them, but they're the poems, where it goes with the letters, go with the word. Like, it spelled out marriage.
Oh, okay.
But
I see what you're saying.
And the poem was, maybe a ring isn't all a girl expects.
Okay, one, very impressive that you remember that. But two, I can see why you remember that. That's wonderful.
I know. And I was like, that's it.
That's
we should
poetry.
Be studying her. Why are we studying this guy? It's awful. But that's like that,
It is. It's the highbrow, lowbrow bullshit that we always rail against with books, with, fiction and nonfiction. So it should apply to poetry as well.
Yeah.
Well done for bringing that.
Trying something different.
Dismantling some of that highbrow, lowbrow.
Yes.
I wonder if there's a Beach Reads poetry.
Probably.
Section.
Shel Silverstein.
Marie Sendak.
Exactly.
That poetry I can get into.
Yeah, and I'm not knocking those because I like both of them. So
absolutely.
I'm not saying, it's just I think it's something that we made inaccessible, and maybe it shouldn't be as much as it is.
It does remind me of a conversation with Matthew Kaye where he was like, anyone can be a poet, and that felt like
like what?
Almost a revolutionary thing to say too. Is like, oh wait, what? It doesn't have to be regimented and iambic pentameter, and
that's the other thing, right? They teach you this formula, and immediately I was like, you took my wonderful little books and put math in it. What are you doing?
Why are we counting?
Why? Syllables? No.
Are you trying to ruin books for me? No.
I can't tell you if there was any specific form in any of these poems. I just enjoyed it. See?
That's wonderful.
That's the difference.
And it's kind of like, visual art. Like, there's if a certain piece speaks to you, then there's something in it that speaks to you, and that's all you need to worry about in my mind. And same thing with a poem.
Yep. Exactly.
And even if someone says, that painting is beautiful and it elicits nothing with you, then great, fine. Ignore it.
You love it. That's wonderful. Yeah.
Fantastic.
That's what you should put up in your home, is the things that speak to you, not the things you find on signs
at
stores.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
not the same things that you might find anywhere else.
In the background of, a set on a TV show.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for giving us another toolbox in our ways out of book hole.
Yeah.
Who knew this episode would turn into emerging from a book hole?
That should almost be, if there was a song, that should almost be the title. Emerging from your book hole as a beautiful butterfly. Like what?
Do you think that song is a rock song or like an orchestral song or like a country song?
I think it's, I don't think it has words.
Oh.
I think it's just an instrumental.
Oh, yeah. Like a build-up.
Yeah.
And just, I like it.
Boom! Bursting out of the book hole.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how I picture it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, great. I've got another thing that will help you out of a show hole.
Ooh, show hole.
If you're in a show hole.
You know it.
I've got a show from Apple TV Plus. It's called Bad Sisters. Yes. I mentioned this to you and Haley and Maggie the other day.
Yes.
So John,
who are real people.
I forgot that we were, we weren't sure if they were real people.
Well, Haley always said was real, but Maggie for some reason
we were like,
she got put into an imaginary world.
I mean, it's true. She is almost too good to be true.
That's
fair. That's why.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah,
I like that.
But she is real. She
is. She is real.
Don't tell me she's not real. She's real.
She's real.
All right. So is John Paul or JP. Except John Paul or JP is dead when the show opens.
Shit, JP.
JP is the
guy named JP.
I know, right? But they call him that. JP. JP is the husband of Grace, and Grace is one of 5 sisters.
Okay.
And at the funeral for JP, you see that the sisters aren't very upset by the death of JP.
Yeah.
And pretty quickly, we flash to 6 months earlier at Christmas. And we see a little bit of JP and his dickish behavior. He is self-righteous. He's just kind of an asshole in all the family interactions. You can see him sort of pitting people against each other. And the next day, he manipulates his wife and doesn't allow her to hang out with her sisters at this annual tradition that they do every year at the end of the day after Christmas.
Oh, no.
All of these sisters, by the way, lost their parents at a pretty young age. And so the oldest sister, who is played... God, I just completely forgot her name. And she's wonderful. It'll come to me.
Yeah, it's fine.
She's the oldest. She's been sort of a surrogate parent. So these sisters are very tight as a result. And this is an annual tradition, and he gets in the way of it.
Oh, no.
So the rest of the sisters are sort of talking about JP, and they're really honestly worried. Like, he just keeps tearing Grace down. They think she is getting smaller and smaller, personality-wise, even physically-wise. Like, she used to be fun. She used to be happy, and now she just seems worn down. And then one of them says, maybe we should just kill him.
Yeah, you should.
And so for the rest of the episodes, you see a few things. That's the right reaction, by the way. That one right there. You see a few things over the rest of the episodes. One is JP and his terrible, repulsive behavior. More and more depth to it every episode, so that over the course of the season, you find yourself absolutely wanting him to die.
Okay.
You also, over that time, see the sisters as they try to kill him in a few botched attempts.
Oh.
Because they are not assassins. They are not, the ladies from the museum.
Right.
These are just women that are trying to protect their sister and not doing they're not being able to kill very well.
Right.
Because they haven't done that before.
Right.
Okay. Also, that storyline, in the present, after JP's funeral, you see 2 brothers who have taken over their father's insurance company, and they get JP's claim. If they have to pay out JP's claim, it's going to bankrupt them.
Oh, no.
So one of the brothers has decided he's going to play detective and find out what really happened. He is sure that there is some malfeasance at play. He's going to find it. How much he's really sure about that versus just we cannot go bankrupt is what's going on.
Okay.
So one by one, he's questioning the sisters in the present while the other brother starts dating one of the sisters.
Oh, no.
So we've got murder, which might be vengeance and protection. We've got sisterly love. We've got this wild and twisty story that goes in all these really interesting directions. It's super darkly funny. Like, this is black comedy.
Okay? It sounds amazing. I'm already in.
Yeah, but it's also really heartfelt, too. Like, there's a real level of connection. There's a real level of, you understand wanting to protect and to do this. So it's a bit of everything, and it's one guy that is just one of the worst characters you've ever seen in your life. which is kind of gratifying in the end.
It is gratifying.
And for this, I chose it for this scene because it's ending an asshole's life.
Done.
And that might be the beginning for other things. So there's endings, there's beginnings, there's all of it.
I love
brought together, and I think it's either 8 or 10 episodes, each one about an hour long. I believe it's a limited series, so there's no future
more.
stuff,
Yeah.
and it ends wonderfully.
Oh,
so
okay,
I'm
in.
highly recommend.
That sounds amazing. I also realized something about myself, which is that I'm apparently down for murder immediately.
Yeah, you are.
You didn't even have to say, like, it gets worse. I was already there. I was like, let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's kill him.
Which is, I guess, good for my good friends to know.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
That if there is a guy that does us rotten, Erin is in.
I'm in.
She is in.
I'm in. Yeah, why not?
I mean, is that part of our relationship services? Is murder for hire?
I don't think we want to advertise.
We don't
that.
want to do
I think
that?
that's
Okay.
gonna have to be a very special circumstance.
Okay.
Yeah. Because here's the thing: I'm in, but I'm also like, you're gonna have to like convince me enough to get up that to do all that work.
Right. That's a lot of work. I'm tired a lot.
I'm tired.
I don't go out to the bars.
I also
till
feel
2
like
a.m.
murdering probably takes place in the darker hours, and
Exactly.
I
We're in
sleep
bed.
a lot.
We've already
I sleep.
established this. We can't do closing times at 2 or 5 a.m. We can't do it.
No. So the death's gonna have to occur. Like I'm going the latest, like 9:45.
Yeah.
And that's pushing it.
Let's go.
I'm
for
gonna have to have a good afternoon.
Let's do
coffee.
a midday murder. That's way better because then we
yeah.
can take a nap afterwards
Yes.
because we've exhausted ourselves
Yes.
from the murder.
We just have to be careful because bright light of day. Just the
You're
bright
right.
light of day.
The bright light of day. But hey, we are used to hiding indoors because of our translucent
Yeah,
skin, so we
that's
can make
true.
this work. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good to know where you stand on murder.
Yeah, I'm here for
Ready to go.
it. Okay, well, I am going to recommend a podcast.
Oh.
It's a new podcast.
Okay.
It's got 3 episodes out now. I've listened to all of them. It's called If Books Could Kill. And yeah, it's with Michael Hobbs, which you might recognize from Maintenance
Yeah.
Phase. And he was previously a co-host on You're Wrong About.
Yeah.
And Peter Shamshari, who hosts a podcast about the Supreme Court called 5 to 4, which I also love because I'm a nerd. And they just break down monumental Supreme Court cases and why the vote fell the way that it did. So it's also like a lot about why it sucks and why it's not really serving America that
good
well.
call.
But
Yeah.
he's a very intelligent lawyer.
Okay.
So this is the base. So the whole basis of the podcast is that they take books that were like super popular, that like took like a phenomenon, like we usually see that with diet books,
Yeah.
like South Beach Diet, something like that. They take books that are popular and they put the moniker on them that they were made popular by airports, because usually those books are like really popular and then they get front and center billing. And they're usually marketed in a certain way, right, to appeal to the masses. And because of that, these types of books often escape deep scrutiny.
Yeah.
Like, should this be a book that everyone should be paying attention to? And it might actually influence thought process without a lot of deep scrutiny. So right away I was in, right?
Yeah.
And then the first episode, and this is, I'm not going to lie to you listeners, I owe all of you an apology.
Oh.
Because the first book they did was Freakonomics. And
Which you recommended in the past.
I did recommend. And I listened to the whole thing and I agreed with everything they said. And the more I thought about it, I was like, how did that escape me? And then I thought, because I read Freakonomics when it was marketed when everybody marketed it. Full disclosure, I didn't reread it before I recommended it because I just remembered the reading experience.
Yeah.
And there's some deeply racist stuff at the end.
No.
Yeah, that I was like, wow, when you look at it through that lens, it's terrible. Now, I feel like 2022, Aaron would pick up that book and
if
be
you had
like,
reread it.
Yeah,
sure.
would be like, ouch, I would not have recommended it probably, but remembering the reading experience and being kind of, and they really do a good job in the podcast of breaking that down and explaining why, like people got wrapped up in it and then we're just kind of like, oh yeah, that makes sense and moved on. And they do that. The second book that they do is a Malcolm Gladwell book.
Oh, the Outliers?
The Outliers, the one with the 10,000 hours it takes to be an expert, that kind of break that down. What I love about both of them is if you know either of them, they are research heavy. Like they don't come in and just give opinions. Like they research the works that these people cite in their books. They research the studies that they talk about.
Whoa.
Like they really go into a deep dive to understand where they got this information. They break down why it's bullshit.
Wow.
And it is great. So it was Freakonomics, Malcolm Gladwell, and the last one was called by David Brooks, called Bobos in Paradise. I'm not super familiar with him, but he's apparently was very popular at one time, and this book was. And it's so entertaining, it's informative, but it's also super common sense the way they break it down. And what I like about it is that they do say like some parts of this make sense, or there's some parts of this that are good, but maybe not good, but could be an interesting book if written differently. But then they also break down, like, how did this happen? Like, how collectively did we just buy this and believe it?
That's so fascinating.
It is. It's
just
so
that process
interesting.
in and of itself. Yeah.
Yeah. And to have the very first episode be a book that I myself enjoyed and then look at and go, oh my gosh, that's a totally different thing.
But it's true, at the time when it came out, everyone was into it. Same with the Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
I'm really intrigued to see what they talk about next.
I am too.
There could be so many options.
Yeah. And they have a very dry sense of humor. So it's not going to be like laugh out loud like I'm dying, but it's just really interesting. I love the way that they do it. It brings up a lot of really interesting points. I think it's something that we're missing a lot, which is a lot of media literacy. It's a lot of understanding when someone gives you a fact, where that comes from and how to understand whether or not that's true, which I think we have unfortunately a big gap in our understanding of that right now.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated. I love the idea of it as a podcast. It was so interesting. And like I said, sorry, maybe just don't read that book. Like, I feel bad that I supported it now.
I mean, that is a risk that we took on when we started this podcast, is the fact that each book that we recommend came from a moment in time.
Yeah.
And as we know, moments in time, we reflect on them in the future. Yeah. And we may go, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
The things that we believed, or the things that we liked, or the things that we read. Good Lord.
Right. Exactly.
So don't be too hard on yourself.
I'm trying not to be, but yeah, it was a moment that I had in the car when I was like, dear God.
So listen, if you've been, queuing all of our picks, you can remove that one from your queue.
One
less book to read.
One less book to read.
Boom.
Exactly. And listen, this is nothing that I want more for the world than to be able to make mistakes and just say, shit, I made a mistake. That was bad.
Imagine that.
And just didn't own it.
Yeah.
I didn't double down. I didn't say that I'm in bed with Stephen Levitt and that I'll never not take his, we do that all the time where we're just like, no, it's great.
You didn't go on the attack and attack the hosts of the podcast.
Say, well, they're
how
dummies.
dare they?
Yeah. What a dumb idea.
Yeah.
No, it's great. And they're absolutely right. So there you go.
See, the malleability of the human mind. We can learn and grow.
Beautiful thing. Yeah.
We can apologize.
Who knew that Aaron in 2005 would be different from 2022 Aaron?
What's that shocking?
Yeah. What?
17 years.
Come on.
Look at that.
Yeah. Crazy.
Were you out of college at that point?
I was.
Okay.
All right. Fresh.
You're fresh out of college.
Pretty fresh.
We don't know what the fuck we're doing fresh out of college. Good Lord.
Yeah. What was I even doing with that book? I probably got it at an airport.
You probably did.
What?
Or because everyone was reading it.
Yeah. And because I was like, interesting way to get into economics. That sounds smart, which is probably how they got a lot of people to buy that book.
That's probably true. And I mean, nowadays, you have a very keen interest in like finance and money and budgeting and all of the things. So it totally makes sense why it appealed to you. And I imagine it appealed to a lot of people who that may be confusing, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And to try and like clear it up. So that sucks that then there was racism.
I think that there's we understand the natural inclination or are intrigued by contradictions, right? Like these two things are true. Like I think the mystery part of my brain, the choose your own adventure part of my brain, loves to find out that this weird thing's related to this weird thing. Like this sales of this item went down because, this weird product from another country became way more expensive and no one knew it. Like I love finding out about interrelated things like that. And that's all that book was. It just turns out that some of the things that they related maybe didn't need to be related.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Maybe they didn't hook the right things together.
Huh. Well, I mean, everyone, we have biases that we're taught at an early age.
Absolutely.
And some of us get past them and some of us don't.
Yeah, 100%.
Obviously, we're totally fine now and we're perfect and we'll never.
Yeah. No, I'll never mess up again, but never. I did this time.
That is your promise to the audience. Never again. No more mistakes.
If I do, I will come and say, I'm sorry, just don't read that one.
Yeah, you will. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll own your mistakes. So, like, if we do a murder for hire, well, we won't own that mistake because that's not a mistake.
I never
did
that.
What are we talking about?
I never did it.
No.
What are you talking about?
Good Lord.
That does not sound like something I would do.
And then the court pulls out all of our episodes.
Oh, boy. Yeah, well, clearly it was a joke. Obviously. I wouldn't
understand
say it that
humor?
much if I was really an assassin.
Don't you
would
understand
I bring it up?
it?
Would I be like, hey, I murder people if I really murdered people?
Right.
No. I'd be like, I'm scared of murder. No. Come on. Come on now.
I don't know if we'd like that, Aaron, that goes, I'm scared of murder.
Murder. Ooh,
no.
Gross.
Oh, no. Mm-mm. Everything that just happened right there, I hate.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
See?
Yeah.
No, give me a murder.
Also, by the way, so your son and your husband came over this week to fix a couple things for me, which was very lovely. And at one point, they had to go down into the basement, and there was a new guy that was with Zach. So everyone was playing up the let's go into the murder basement because, you know, that's what I always refer to it. And I think by the time the new guy got down there, he's like, why is this a murder basement?
Yeah.
And then I remembered we started calling it that when I first moved in, and there was just nothing. It was just hard concrete floors and lots of shadows and bone dust. And now I've put down like carpet tiles and shelves, and it looks a little more like, you know, but I still call it the murder basement.
Also, that also started because of original podcast Fiona,
that's true,
who constantly tried to lure me down there.
She was trying to murder you. She was trying to.
She didn't like me, so it wasn't for anything good.
No.
It wasn't like she was going to give me a, hey, we're best friends award. She was going to murder me.
And she was going to murder you.
Yeah. She thought the best way to do it was for me to tumble to my death onto a concrete floor. Not a bad plan. That's why I never got near the door when she was there.
You knew better.
I knew better.
Yeah.
Not a bad plan. But yeah, I've taken a lot of flack from Zach about that. That is not a murder basement.
Oh, he didn't see it in the early days. It was definitely a murder basement.
Also, when it's not your life being threatened, I think you see it as less serious.
Has your life ever been threatened by a cat, Zach? You don't know.
No.
You don't know?
You don't know.
And nowadays, the ghost of Fiona, I am convinced, is communicating to the current podcast. So there's still a threat of murder.
Oh, I see it. I see it. I think
the amount of time
the only one. Yeah, I feel entirely comfortable because I don't think she cares enough.
No, the boy cats spend an inordinate amount of time in the basement. So I am convinced they're communing with Fiona.
I think so.
And hatching plans. And hey, just, you know, come up with the plans, but don't execute them.
Don't execute them.
Yeah.
No, the planning's the fun part.
Exactly.
Yeah. We all know
it's never going to go out the way you want it to.
That's the whole point of the planner industry. Planning's the fun part. Doing the work, not so much.
Just keep ruminating on the best ways to murder.
Yeah.
That's all you need to do. Yeah.
You do that, and in the meantime, we'll be back in a couple weeks.
Yeah. It's closing time for this episode.
It is.
But not for us.
Not for us. No. Curtain's not going down on us. Just on this specific episode.
Just on this episode. That's right.
In the meantime,
happy reading.